round and what we can expect from the fourth round.
That would be a yes, so I'm gonna first. Elaine, can you say something?
Sure.
Hello. Maybe you, if you mute yours, Lindsay.
Yes, I hear something back there.
So that sound should be off.
Yeah,
Exactly. What's the problem?
yours is louder. That's you. Shall we try it, Lindsay?
It's like the same as one of the ages and then this moves up to here. I'm just that's what you're This stuff feels like prerequisite to being mayor. There's no specifically will be coming for you like on the chairs and stuff.
So we get everything except for halfway.
Lives.
I don't want to. Takes care of me everywhere. Visiting, she knows that she never pieces around. She send me. I don't even. I have the conference call number. That's just.
I got first.
I mean, class and the phone number. There's just so much of. I just actually want to phone call myself of it. Having done, I just, it's really, so much going with, and that is just,
Yeah,
I just don't want to know.
right, yeah.
I have to figure out how to control on here. I can't Zoom, already do two remotes to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Lindsay,
Yes.
this is saying affordable housing info section start now. Have to restart it. Changed into just that was being for sure wasn't has some of like cattle calling it there are 60 cases and names sort of ones. It's all good. 12 kids. Gosh, it's a huge that maybe two or three others. Oh, gosh, this is like line 30, everyone's also probably going to be for New York and where you would have to maybe what's not on the parent, February 9, and of course, I might send her a looking for it, and then that can get a week, a 3 week, 10 days. I'm actually showing that you're muted, Lindsay, now. So like suppose he can move so many giant people for the hours. Like traditional finance man, because the Microsoft Teams is the way, there's so many of them, and you just see them. So go to the meeting, because you're at the. I know. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Use all of them too for the hours and stuff. So, and we put the best speaker. We have to send it to tablet and my job.
Yeah.
I just got back from the therapy. No, it's quite not a good. So checking. You actually have like. It's just. That's more just you need which you understand. Just like I'm saying. There's no issue. Somebody's just somebody teaching leaves.
Oh, Michelle Obama said to me, so it's meant that there's several.
Let's try it now. Guys, wait, how are we doing this? You can hear me, I'm being recorded, yes? Good, we're fine. All right, excellent. Where did we get to? We got to, that's what we're gonna talk about. All right, who are we? That we're standing here talking to you about affordable housing.
Please, thank you.
Clark Caton Hints has been appointed the city planners for the city of Lambertville, and I am a planner with them. You are probably more used to seeing either Michael Sullivan or James Clavelli here when you are in the audience for a planning board or a zoning board application. Most of my work is affordable housing, so I am normally not here for just a regular application. I do a lot of work for the two court adjudicators in our office, so my specialty is all the affordable housing rules. And I'm also lucky enough to live here, so this is in one sense personal for me as well. Kelly is here. Kelly Grant is our Affordable Housing Council. She is with Malamute. Is that how you say that, Kelly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you have anything additional to say about your bio?
Other than, I've been working as a city attorney since 2018 and worked through the first amended settlement agreement with the council at that time. So I have familiarity last 6 years with the city and its affordable housing obligations.
So I will be tapping her frequently for checking to be sure that the history that we have here is accurate. All right. Before we even dive in, I thought it would be good. Is there any way we can get rid of that on the screen or like? Not here. There we go. Thank you. I thought it'd be good to talk about what's an affordable housing unit. Is it just a landlord being nice and dropping the rent to below market rents? Or is it something more specific? And the answer is, of course, it's something much more specific. An affordable housing unit must be deed restricted for at least 30 years. That means it cannot come onto the open market for 30 years. The rent or the purchase price is controlled. It's affirmatively marketed throughout the region. There are some cities that have, for example, with their HUD grants, they have a municipal residency preference. That is not permitted for affordable housing. Affordable housing is available only to income qualified households, and those households must be certified. And that is a process that you have to show up with your pay stubs and your tax returns and your bank statements. And you have to prove that you are below a certain income before you are eligible for an affordable housing unit. And all of this work is done by an affordable housing administrative agent, and the city has an administrative agent appointed who oversees all of this work for the affordable units in Lambertville. You probably can't read this, but this is how much is the maximum you can make to be eligible for an affordable unit. Now, Lindsay, you said this is, there we go. All right. So median income, statistics majors in the room, everybody know what median means? It is not the same as average. Okay, this is median income in the region. This is the region, these three counties. This is moderate income, which is 80% of median by household size. Low income and very low income. Low income is 50% and very low income is 30% of this median income by household size. So that is the maximum that a household can make to be eligible for an affordable unit. And over here, again, you can't really tell, but this is the amount by which rents can be raised this year. Affordable rents can be raised by this amount this year, and affordable sales prices can be raised by this amount this year. And this is also the regional asset limits. Families who apply for affordable housing are allowed to have up to this amount in other assets. Otherwise, they are deemed too well off to be eligible for an affordable unit. How much are rents in an affordable unit? Again, this is very tightly prescribed. If you are at 30% of median income, this is your rent for a one-bedroom unit. And this assumes you will be paying electric, gas, I think electric and gas. I think I included water, sewer, and trash in this rent, but electric and gas are separate. 2-bedroom units are this, 3-bedroom units are this, for each of these income levels. So it's at least down here, it's a good chunk below market rents. And again, these are very tightly controlled. You can only raise them by that amount that we looked at a minute ago each year. So, affordable housing in New Jersey. It started off in the 1970s with Mount Laurel 1. The first Mount Laurel decision said any municipality that is growing has an obligation to provide affordable units. And what happened after that was pretty much nothing. Some municipalities just said, we're not going to grow. We're not going to approve anything that has new housing. There was no downside to not doing anything, and so nothing happened. And so the same people who sued for Mount Laurel 1 came back and sued for Mount Laurel 2. And the Mount Laurel 2 decision said, okay, not only do municipalities that are growing have to provide affordable units, every municipality has to provide affordable units. And if you don't, builders can sue you. And that suddenly put some teeth into this. So the legislature got busy and they, come back. Legislature got busy and they passed the Fair Housing Act. That was 1985. And that's what established COA, the Council on Affordable Housing, which was given broad oversight over all things affordable housing in New Jersey. They calculated each municipality's obligation. The municipality had to figure out how it was going to satisfy that obligation and encode that in a housing element and fair share plan, which they submitted to COA for review. And then COA blessed it. The municipality got what was called substantive certification. I have no idea what in-substantive certification is, but subcert gives you immunity from builder's remedy lawsuits. Developers cannot sue you if your plan has been blessed by COA. Kelly, you want to add anything to that? Did I get everything? Okay, good. Thank you. So that happened for the first and second round. Each quote unquote round lasted 6 years. And of course, circumstances change, so COA gave itself the opportunity to revise the rules every 6 years. So the first round went from 1987 to 1993. The second round went from 1993 to 1999. And then we're at the third round. There were no third round rules in 1999. COA finally got around to it in 2004. And in between those two, that 5 years, town said, hey, no rules, no houses. The third round rules COA got sued. The appellate court, get back here. I have to learn these buttons. Okay, here we go. COA got sued. The appellate court invalidated the rules, ordered COA to adopt amended rules within 6 months. Here we go, a whole year later, COA adopts amended rules. Fair Share and a bunch of other people still don't like them. The appellate court affirmed the regulations and the rules regarding rehab in prior rounds, and ordered COA to develop valid third round rules that kind of follow the second round rules. These are the second round rules, by the way. So that was 2010. And again, in between 1999 and 2010, when all this fighting is going on, no housing is being built. 4 years later, in 2014, COA finally promulgates a new set of third round rules, but the vote to adopt them is tied 6-6, so it fails. Fair Share comes in, files a lawsuit, a motion in aid of litigants' rights, and in March 2015, the Supreme Court determined in its decision that COA was a moribund agency, not doing its job, and basically said to COA, we, the courts, are going to take this back over. Thank you very much. You can go sit down. So now everything's back to the courts. There are no rules. What on earth were municipalities to do? The court prescribed a method by which municipalities could get their certification, but there was no guidance on how to calculate the obligation. So, surprising exactly nobody, Fair Share Housing Center came in and said, we'll develop a methodology and we'll calculate obligations for everybody. And they did that. And they were huge. They were very high. Lambertville's, for example, under their methodology was 170 units. A bunch of towns got together and said, well, we're not having that. We're going to retain our own consultant and we'll have that consultant figure out a methodology. And that consultant promulgated obligations for every municipality. Shocking nobody, they were very low. So the process required a town to file what's called a declaratory judgment action with the court. And that starts the process and that gets you temporary immunity from developer lawsuits. And then Fair Share Housing Center, as an interested party, said, we will work with towns to figure out a reasonable obligation. And that became a negotiation. I have seen emails saying, I want to know what the algorithm is for calculating the third round obligation. There was no algorithm. It was a negotiation. And most towns wound up with a number somewhere in between the very high fair share number and the very low consultant number. The court had to approve that. The court has to approve every single obligation for every town that went through this process. And the court approval of a housing element of fair share plan is what secures final immunity for a municipality. So it's a long, very uncertain, expensive process. It's a pain in the ass. Am I right? You were, so, but Lambertville went through it. Lambertville filed a declaratory judgment action, got together with Fair Share Housing Center, negotiated 137 unit obligation. In between the 170 that was Fair Share's original number, and I think it's 70 that was the consultant's number. So here we are somewhere in the middle. We identified 38 existing affordable units to satisfy that, which means we needed 99 more. Well, crap, where are we going to put them? We don't have enough land for 99 new affordable housing units. And guess what? The rules anticipate that. They know there are towns that are fully built out and they cannot fulfill the entire obligation as determined by this negotiation process. It's called a vacant land adjustment. And it too is a pain in the ass. You have to go through every single vacant parcel in the municipality. You have to list it. And you have to determine whether or not it is capable of producing affordable units. And if it is, you put it on your list and you figure out how many affordable units it is capable of producing. Anybody who wants to see Lambertville's vacant land analysis can look. It lists the block and lot, who owns it, how big it is, how many acres are constrained by things like wetlands, whether it's big enough to generate affordable units, and if so, how many. And based on that analysis, Lambertville said, we can't do 137 units. Here's our vacant land analysis. We think we can do whatever the number is. And again, that gets negotiated. A vacant land adjustment has to be approved by the court. No town can just walk in and say, we can't do 100 units, we're only going to do 20. The vacant land adjustment has to be analyzed and approved by the court. And that is why most towns had what were then called court masters. They're now called court adjudicators. They are experts appointed by the court, experts in affordable housing, who are qualified to evaluate things like a vacant land adjustment. So Lambertville's vacant land adjustment got approved. which meant the obligation now gets divided into two buckets. The first is this bucket. It's called the realistic development potential. The vacant land adjustments basically showed you have room for 88 units. And the remainder is what's called unmet need. So this is what the city has to do. And this is what the city will try to do. If it is going to act in good faith, this is what it's going to try to do. Two buckets. So we're going to focus first on this bucket. This is how we figured out a way to get to 88 units. We have 22 out of 37 units at Heritage Village, and we'll talk about why we can't use all 37. We have one accessory apartment. We have 4 affordable for sale units that were built by Habitat for Humanity. We have 11 special needs units out of 18. Special needs units, by the way, are credited by the bedroom up at the Little Haven Group Home up the hill, which total 38 existing units. This is why the high school site is important. High school site was to deliver 28 additional units for a total of 66. And because the high school site is going to be family rental units, we can apply 22 bonus credits, the maximum permitted, and I'll show that in a minute. And that's what gets us to 88. I'm ahead of myself here. All right, so why are we doing it this way? Well, this is New Jersey. We have rules. One of the rules says only 25% of your obligation can be age restricted. So obligation is 88, 25% is 22. That's why we can only use 22 of the Heritage Village units. Another rule says at least 25% of your obligation has to be rental units. Well, we got that covered. These are rentals, so we're good. Another rule says half of all rental units must be family rentals. Family rentals means not age restricted, not special needs. So if we're going to deliver 66 units and 25% of them are going to be rentals, half of those. So let's take a look at what our rental units look like. Come on. Are they family rental units? Nope. That one is. So we have one family rental unit. One. We need 17. And at least 50% of all units must be family units, whether they're rental or for sale. So this is a family rental. Those are family for sale. So now we got 5 family units. We need 33. So that's our existing 38 units. We cannot deliver these 2 requirements based on this. Again, that's why the high school site is important. It is 28 family rental units. So what did we need for family rentals? 17. 28 gets us there. No problem. What did we need for total family units? 33. 28 and 4 are 32 and 1 are 33. So those 28 units cover these obligations. And so there we have 66 proposed and existing units. We're allowed 25% of the obligation as rental bonuses. So we can apply 22 bonuses to these 28 units right here. And I'm going to wind up being hidden under that window, I think. Is there any way to move that, Lindsay? Thank you. There we go. So we have 22 bonus credits only because the high school site is family rentals. If they were going to be for sale townhouses, no bonuses. But this is what gets us to 88. So that is why we put together the compliance plan the way we did. So just to summarize what we committed to for RDP. We said we would do a redevelopment plan for the high school site that allowed for 28 affordable family rental units. We did that. We did it in 2018 and adopted it. And as we'll talk about in a minute, we did it again in 2020 and adopted it. That allows us, I will come back. There we go. That allows us to claim these 22 rental bonuses. So the high school site is actually delivering a total of 50 credits toward an 88 unit commitment or obligation. We have 38 existing units plus the 50 gives us the entire 88 unit RDP. We also promised in the settlement agreement, and we are ordered to do this by the court, The deed restrictions on these units will be 30 years. 50% of them will be affordable to very low and low income households. 13% will be affordable to very low income. And for the family units, there is a prescribed bedroom distribution. Only 20% can be 1 bedroom, at least 20% have to be 3 bedroom. And we said we would memorialize all of these commitments in a housing element and fair share plan. And we did that. There it is. And I just posted on the city website. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
All right. Now let's move on to unmet need. Remember, we had 2 buckets. So we just took care of the 88 unit bucket. Now we're into the 49 unit bucket. This is the bucket of units that we say we will try to deliver if possible. And guess what? We've already delivered 20 of them. We have the apartment in the Lily Street mansion. We have the remaining special needs bedrooms for Little Haven. And we have 12 of 15 age restricted units at Heritage Village. Why 12? Because it's 25% of 49. Can't go above 25% for age restricted units. So we have 20 existing units, leaving a gap of 29. And to fill that, we agreed to adopt inclusionary overlay zoning on 4 sites, Poor Boy Lot and the Bird Farmstead, the Trenton Cracker Factory property, and the Clausen Farm. We also agreed to a mandatory affordable housing set aside of 20%. That is to say, if at least 5 new units are being delivered, 1 must be affordable. We agreed to do that for any development that got any kind of a use variance, was the result of a redevelopment plan, anything but a straight up developed by right based on zoning. So those are the promises that we made in our settlement agreement, in our court order, to help satisfy unmet need. So just to summarize the entire settlement agreement, RDP of 88, unmet need of 49 gets you to the 137 units we committed to. We have 38 existing units and 20 toward unmet need. We have the redevelopment plans of the Lambertville site, the inclusionary overlay ordinances, the mandatory set aside, and a housing element and fair share plan. It's really important for me to tell you, this was not done in a vacuum. City officials were involved in this all the way along. The council was aware of it, helped negotiate it, approved the terms of the settlement agreement, and the court approved the agreement at a fairness hearing. What's a fairness hearing? You have to go before the court and prove that this agreement is fair to the protected class, to low and moderate income households in the region. So the court said, yes, this plan is fair to low and moderate income households in the region. It presents enough of an opportunity for them to live in an affordable unit. So that's basically the history through the 2018 settlement agreement. Kelly, did I miss anything? No, she's rattling her head. Okay. Any questions to this point, just on how we got here?
Well, my question was, we said it was very strict for somebody to qualify based on income. So I think what I remember for a household 2 up there, you couldn't make more than 93,000.
Okay.
Say somebody has $500,000 in CDs, but the income that generates is only 25,000.
So-
They qualify?
Nope. And
They would.
no. And here's why. Yes, here, make me go back. That's this number right here. If they have more than that number in assets, they do not qualify.
So they can have 78,000
Yeah.
and still qualify.
Yeah, they can. Other questions just on how we got here? Holly, and then here and here.
Speak loudly, please, for everybody.
Hi, how are you? Not to include the Hills Development Corporation also in a lawsuit with regards to.
Try not to get too in the weeds.
No, I know that, but this really set up the council for affordable housing. Background in affordable housing as well. And I didn't see that Hibernia was incorporated into the methodology. And Karen mentioned to me because of the set aside for seniors, it didn't meet that obligation. There are low-income housing tax credits on that building. When do they expire? They're a 30-year product on that property. They should be expiring soon. You incorporate developmentally disabled into that. I don't know why, I didn't see it.
Right, and my guess is, now, I will say that I was not involved initially, so I'm gonna ask Kelly if she has any insight into that. My guess is they're too old. If they were
It's-
developed before 1980, they're too old. Now, if we renew that commitment, they might be able to be counted going forward.
That's
But
what I
again,
suggest.
we have a ton of senior units here.
Well, it doesn't have to stay senior, you could do a different set aside.
So we'll talk about that in the fourth round, when
on.
we talk about the fourth round. So, who did I say?
I'm sorry, I don't need to be.
No, I just, no, but my guess is, so the Hibernia and the apartments down on North Main Street
Yeah.
are both too old. They were built before 1980, so they cannot be counted in the affordable housing inventory.
That's good.
Says the rules. Talk to the rules.
It's,
Yeah,
it's in tax.
I know that, I know.
I'm just curious why it can't be incorporated in if you rent it.
Did,
Renovate.
maybe it can if you renovate it. If it is discussed in here.
Okay.
Next question.
So, do you want to something that I had heard, a long time, that people used to talk about it all the time previously, and this is this overlay versus redevelopment district thing that we passed an ordinance on a couple of years ago to make it basically 179, 160, whatever that little stretch is, to the river. What are those, what do they mean?
So that, I think you're talking about is your enhanced mandatory set aside,
Okay,
which basically says not just if you get a variance or redevelopment plan, do you have to do a 20% set aside. But any project with 5 or more new units, if it just gets straight out planning board approval, still needs to do a 20% set aside. What do you think happens when you have one of those developments? A developer says, oh, if I do 5 units, I gotta make one affordable, I'll do 4 units.
but there are other things you can do to keep that from happening by not giving them variances that they want to have to. stick
Well,
that
this would be no
stuff in.
variances, this would be just a straight by right approval. Oh, I'll just.
Not if they have to subdivide a lot.
Anyway, but you're right, you're talking about the mandatory set aside,
Okay,
and that's there.
and then what's the overlay?
An overlay is an option over the existing zoning that says if the property owner or a developer chooses, they can take advantage of this option, and there's usually some financial benefit. It would be increased density, for example, most usually. You can take advantage of that and you can build at this higher density, but the gimme back is some of those units have to be affordable. It is optional. They can live the rest of their lives and not do a thing. But if they choose to, they can develop that land at the higher density and we would get some affordable units out of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5.
I have two very simple questions, I think, I don't look for a long time.
Yeah, because we do need
The
to.
first slide, you said that it's a requirement for it to be 30-year deed restriction. Now, I know that there's a ADU that was created recently, got affordable housing funds. I think it was a 10-year
10 years.
deed restriction.
Correct.
Why, so that doesn't count in our affordable housing.
It does, and we're gonna talk about that. It does,
Okay.
but it counts toward unmet need. Yes, ADUs, affordable accessory apartments carry a 10-year deed restriction.
Unmet need as opposed to obligation. Okay, and then, the other question that I had was, where can you find the exact formula that you use to calculate all this? I understand it's supposed to be posted at the DCA's website, and it is not there on the library.
You're talking about for the fourth round?
I'm talking about how we're calculating our current unmet need and obligation.
Not a formula. That, remember I said that was a negotiation.
Okay. But
That
now
was
there's a formula because we have to have a certain number of, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, has something, still some nothing family. What is that?
That's the second round rules. NJAC 5:93.
Okay, and those are available where?
I can make them available. They're available on the DCA website. You could, it's legislation. It's,
Yeah.
state regulation. So you can search NJAC 5:93, and you will get that,
NJAC.
5:93.
That's administrative code, New Jersey administrative code.
Baby.
Question about, South Hundred Apartments.
Yeah.
You said that they would need to reapply, is that?
They would need to renew whatever the funding is.
Okay, they've always, that would be something to be looked into because.
Absolutely.
But they've never been age restricted. So that's always, they've always been disability, age, whatever,
Yeah.
anybody.
Mhm. Yeah, great.
So, and
For the fourth round?
actually I have earnings that too. Before, yeah, okay, so it's like
Good.
that
Great.
many years.
Great. Yeah, you are limited as to the, yeah, you're limited as to the age restricted apartments you can have because not that it would ever happen in this town. But there are bad actors who would say, well, we'll just do all age restricted and that way we don't have to worry about families and schools and all that stuff. So. I think you're right here.
Just a quick question on your question, and then I have a question. But the question on your question is, who approaches those two, those two, let's see here.
Of the county. Right?
For an extension of expiring
Yeah, or it's a written negotiated
Yes.
financing agreement or anything like that.
Yes, what would the current deed restriction when those 30 years are? And then we would go and negotiate if the city was inclined another extension of the controls to maintain the affordability.
One from Aaron.
Yeah, stand up.
People are trying as well.
That's what
In general, and we've done this in the past in the city, when the 30 years expires, if the city is inclined to continue that unit as a deed restricted affordable unit, whether it be disability, age, family, rental, or for sale, we would negotiate with the homeowner or the landlord for an extension, and you would continue to get the credit for it.
They'd be credited as new units in the.
So that would be for which round then?
It would be depending upon when the unit expired, so like Elaine said, everything after 1980, but if you brought 20 on in 1982 and plus 30 years, 1990 plus 30, they're never all expiring.
Right.
At once.
Yeah, they would need to be expiring during the round. So the fourth round is about to start July 1st, 2025. It's a 10-year round. If it expires at any point in those 10 years, it is a possibility for extension of controls. And we are having those conversations with all of our client towns right now, identifying all the possible ways that units can be generated for the fourth round without having to do anything.
So basically, those two existing apartment, well, let's call them apartment buildings, but those two existing apartment buildings. Can we could take an action and start a conversation for them to qualify for the next round
Sure,
as they're expiring.
yes.
Okay. And the question I originally wanted to ask is, on one of your earlier slides, you put some other locations that up there. One was the Clausen Farm, and then there was two other ones.
So there was the Bird Farmstead and the Corboy Lot, the Plussen Farm, and the Trenton Cracker Factory. site.
Now, what's the status of that?
We're gonna talk about that.
Current, okay, thank
Who else had questions? Larry.
you. I thought there was a fourth person back there.
Wants to. Maybe they got their question.
Answer.
All right, quick, because we do have to keep.
Right, with ominous tones, we always say, and if none of this, then the builder gets to do. And I never have known what the builder gets to do. They just come in and build whatever they want, wherever they want.
Pretty much.
So how,
We're gonna talk about.
so question, follow-up question to that. How did the court perceive that as a well, certainly not a remedy.
It's a remedy to a town that is resistant to providing affordable units.
But
You have friends in South Brunswick?
but the builder can't just come and build something that doesn't pass codes and et cetera.
So they can submit a site
So
plan
I think the town
application.
that wanted to be non-compliant.
They can submit a
just
site plan
let that
application.
lapse and have it happen. And say, okay, we're fine, we're gonna let the builders build what they want, they come to the planning board, they get.
They actually, in some cases, they don't go to the planning board, they go to a special hearing officer at the court.
I don't understand it as
We'll talk about it.
as a whole, but.
We'll talk about it. So you've had your turn, but let's go here.
Well, I just wanted to answer that piece because I've been doing this for decades. The judge will get it if it's a crazy plan, he's not gonna approve it even if it's above his revenue suit. So the other thing is there's no one who has any action right now against this community.
No,
So.
Well-
This is,
not counting Merrick Wilson.
no, but he has no legal action on affordable housing.
No, no, right now, our immunity is intact.
Also, when you're talking about cases, you also failed to mention, there's also environmental constraints that have to be looked at. I mean, new build, but in this, in round two, you had, if you protected affordable, you protected steep slopes. Those were not areas for inclusionary zoning. If you had an ordinance, you had the countryside case, which I was involved with personally 12 years ago. So I met my wife, where if you were environmentally sensitive and you weren't growing, you didn't have to get a regional share. You've got the Highbridge case, which I was involved with Sierra Club, where they weren't building affordable housing on site. They couldn't get sewers because of environmental
Yeah.
sensitive. So there are environmental constraints, and it's not just a blanket giveaway.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question on the fairness hearing,
Mhm.
because we made that commitment, right, in
Yep.
2018, and, but that commitment was based on a commitment by, what was it, K Hovnanian?
No,
No, it's
there was no developer at the time.
a different
There
developer.
was
No
no
developer.
developer,
Oh, no developer,
no developer.
okay.
This was, we're gonna create a redevelopment plan in the hopes of attracting development interest. We may need to amend the redevelopment plan so the developer can build something that will satisfy our affordable housing needs.
Maybe the question a little bit like stupid. I mean, you hear, once the houses get built,
Mhm.
who they belong to? Affordable houses, are they belong to the city?
No, they're
Well, then
privately
different.
owned, privately owned. The landlord must rent at affordable rents. We talked about that.
But who is the landlord?
That any private owner, you could be a landlord and have an affordable unit.
So I can buy the whole 200 units.
Yeah. Sure, sure. Why not for it?
So I can buy and not build.
Who's the landlord until?
All right,
While we're waiting.
So can I buy the rights for the lot
what rights?
to build?
Well, we don't, if you're talking about the high school side, we don't have rights yet because there is no approval. The approval grants the rights.
Just buy the property. You mean buy the property?
You buy it. You can submit an application. Absolutely.
And overall, after that all will be executed, what's the benefit for the city? How much revenues does the city will get and what they will be used for?
Well, the city would get tax revenue. Affordable housing is taxed at a lower rate. But a development on the high school, for example, and I don't want to overstep myself, but development on the high school site that produces even 150 units may well provide more in tax revenue than it's generating now. I don't know that. I don't know. So, but we do need to move on. All right, so let me jump back forward to where we were. Okay, so the settlement got approved at a fairness hearing, the vacant land adjustment got approved, the 137 units got approved, the 88 unit RDP got approved. And Lambertville set about implementing the agreement. You adopted the housing element fair share plan, you adopted a redevelopment plan for the high school, you adopted your mandatory set aside ordinance, and you got ready to adopt the overlay ordinances on those 4 properties. But there were objections to the Clausen Farm overlay. And I was not here at the time, so I'm going to invite Cindy or Kelly or anybody to provide additional context to that if you have. Bottom line is that overlay ordinance did not get adopted.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, they can go to the November 26, 2018 meeting minutes. In which the overlay was removed from the ordinance. There was fairly significant public comment against the overlay in that meeting, and at the time, Mayor Delvecchio expressed that we heard people's concerns, which is why we were killing the current ordinance. So, the overlay for the Clausen, property did not go forward, it was taken out of the, overlay ordinance at that meeting in two
I
thousand.
think none of the overlays got done, right? You had to go back and did the rest of the overlays get adopted? I don't think so.
But, okay, we're speaking about the Clausen ones.
Right.
So
But because
I
the
think the
Clausen form
others-
was being removed,
I
I
think,
believe the other.
I think,
they did
I
get,
think what they did was they just pulled the Clausen
Okay.
overlay out of the ordinance,
Great.
and they adopted the ordinance.
Yep. all right, but. That sentence in big red letters is in big red letters because by doing that, the city was now in violation of its agreement and the court fairness order. And you can't just say, oh, we're not gonna do this. We said we were gonna do it, and the court ordered us to do it, but we're not gonna do it. So what does that mean? We had to go back to the negotiating table. We had to figure out, we had to go to Fair Share and say, we need to figure out some additional unmet need mechanisms because we can't do Clausen Farm overlay. The RDP stayed the same, but now we had to do some additional unmet need measures. Fair Share said, okay, fine. We'll take the Clausen Farm overlay off, but you have to do a 5-unit accessory apartment ordinance, 3 of which have to be low income. And you have to adopt a redevelopment plan for the police station lot that allows for family rental housing. And because of that, these are new compliance mechanisms that were not in the original settlement agreement. The city had to do an amended settlement agreement, had to adopt an amended housing element and fair share plan, and had to go through the redevelopment process for the police station lot. So let me stop here and just say, when a municipality has to do this, has to go back and renegotiate something they've already agreed to do, and blessed by the court, it's in a court order, you're going back and saying, nah, we really didn't mean that, we want to do something else now. This costs money. This costs money. You have a court adjudicator that you pay to navigate this process with the municipality. You have your affordable housing attorney, sometimes you have a planner, it was not me at the time. You have your city officials with their time. This is not free. And we're going to talk in a little while about the trust fund and the fact that the trust fund can't pay for all of this. So paying for this came out of the general fund. So just want to make sure everybody understands there was a cost to this. All right. So Fair Share said, fine. The city agreed to what Fair Share proposed, which is the accessory apartment ordinance and the redevelopment plan for the police station lot. In 2020, you executed an amended settlement agreement that had to go before the court for a fairness hearing. You adopted an amended housing element and fair share plan. Up here. You adopted the accessory apartment ordinance and a redevelopment plan for the police station lot. There was a timeline in the settlement agreement for doing that, and you met the time. You got an extension because of COVID. You met the timeline. And in addition, the city did a couple of things that were not in the amended settlement agreement. What we were just talking about, you enhanced the mandatory set aside for the flat portion of the city so that any planning board approval for 5 or more units had to be, one of them had to be affordable. You amended the redevelopment plan for the high school site to remove the possibility of eminent domain. Everything else about the high school redevelopment plan stayed the same. It was entirely compliant. All you did was remove the possibility for eminent domain. Because I don't think the city really wanted to bond to buy that property, not having a developer ready to take it from them. And then because we've had nothing but words up all night, I put a picture here. So this is where all the existing sites are. I can't read it any more than you can, but you can see these are the overlay zones. This is the high school redevelopment. You all could, I can't even see that. I'm way too old. But you can see the flat part of the city. This is where the enhanced mandatory set aside is. It's right along through here. So where are we now? We have adopted the housing plans. We've adopted the inclusionary overlay ordinances on the Bird Farmstead, on the Corvoy lot, and the Trenton Cracker Factory property. We've adopted the enhanced mandatory citywide set aside. We've adopted the non-condemnation redevelopment plan for the Lambertville High School site that calls for 139 total units and 28 are affordable. And because the redevelopment plan says they must be family rentals, we can apply those 22 bonuses to them. And we adopted the redevelopment plan for the police station lot that again provides for inclusionary family rental housing. I want to take just a minute and talk about why the high school site is important. I am not here advocating for the high school site redevelopment plan one way or the other, but I do want to make sure everybody understands the role it plays in our compliance plan. We agreed to it in 2018 in the settlement agreement. The court approved it. It's, as you saw, the only way we can get our required family and family rental units. And it makes us eligible for bonuses. Bonuses take the pressure off development. By being able to apply bonuses, that's 22 units you don't have to build. So it eases the pressure, but they have to be family rental units. And the site was deemed by the court through the court master, who is an expert in these things, court adjudicator, excuse me, to be a realistic opportunity for the development of inclusionary housing. It is these are the 4 ables that we refer to. They're in the rules: suitable, available, developable, and approvable. It has access to streets. It's a big enough property to accommodate multifamily residential. There are no title encumbrances, and surprisingly, we have a current owner who's actually interested in selling it. It is developable. There is sufficient water capacity and sewer capacity, and the utilities have said that they can extend utilities to the sites. And there are no environmental constraints that would preclude development, and that is a key phrase. There are environmental constraints on the property. The developer who has come forward has said we can develop the property even given those, wherever, there we go. And all approving entities should be able to approve the final plan. And lo and behold, here in 2022 comes K. Hovnanian. And they approach the city, they have a contract to purchase the property, and they present a concept plan, which is more units than what was in the redevelopment plan. However, they would deliver not 28, but 40 affordable units, which is 12 more than we were expecting from the site. What does that do to the buckets? It moves 12 units from the unmet need bucket into the RDP bucket. So now our RDP goes from 88 to 100, but it is self-liquidated by these extra 12 units. And the 49 units drops to 37. This would require an amended settlement agreement. Again, back to Fair Share Housing Center, in front of the court for a fairness hearing. This is not free. Requires an amended housing element and fair share plan. Requires an amended redevelopment plan for the high school site, which we all know. We've talked a lot about why this is a bad idea in a lot of people's minds. I want to make sure we also understand the potential benefits. This higher RDP gives you more bonuses. So instead of 22, we get 25 bonuses. That's an extra 3 units we don't have to build. It allows us to bring in more age restricted and special needs units because these are family units. And it does help defray the unmet need. Potentially, it's a greater set aside than 20%. If KHOG wound up having to say, you know what, that area where the landfill used to be, we're not going to develop on that. We're just going to develop phase 1. The redevelopment plan still requires them to deliver 40 units. So we're getting a greater than 20% set aside out of it. And I'm going to be very careful when I say this to preface it by saying, I have run this by exactly nobody, including Fair Share Housing Center. But we have done the numbers, and doing this may allow the city to fulfill its entire obligation. No RDP and unmet need. You may be able to deliver 137 units in goals for the 3rd round. The important thing is the fact that KHOG came forward and said, we can develop this site, demonstrates the presumption that it is suitable, available, developable, and approvable. But what if we don't do it? What if the high school site does not get developed? Are there other places in town where we could put affordable units? And I know that we've talked about expanding the exclusion zone on the Clausen Farm. We've talked about 295 North Main Street. We're going to talk about why they may or may not work. How many affordable units do we think we could get on the exclusion zone in the Clausen Farm? Could we get 28? Where would they park? We have steep slopes there. What about 295 North Main Street? Do we know that it's entirely in a flood zone? And we're going to look at some graphics in a minute. What are we going to do about that? If we rezone, we can, oops, come back. If we rezone, we cannot specify that they must be rentals. You cannot specify tenure in an ordinance. You can put it in a redevelopment plan, but the overlay ordinance, for example, they don't specify that they have to be rentals. We may not get bonuses. If the units on the Clausen farm that get developed are gonna be for sale units, no rental bonuses. You can incentivize rental development, but you cannot require it except through the redevelopment process. If we're not gonna get bonuses for these units, we need, come back. We need 50 units, not 28, but 50 to satisfy the 88 unit RDP. So I want to look particularly at 295 North Main Street. So here it is. And what you see here, anybody who was here in April for Michael Sullivan's presentation will recognize this. This darker purpley color, this is the 100-year flood zone. And the lighter is the 500-year flood zone. This is 295 North Main Street. These are the existing buildings. So it is virtually entirely in a flood zone. Here's the view from North Union Street. I'm sorry, was there a question?
There are questions, but we're waiting till you look
Okay.
at questions.
Okay. Now, because it's in a flood zone, we could rebuild on this site, but we have to raise everything at least 10 feet, and this was done before the New England flood rule, so it's possible it would have to be raised even further just to deliver what is there right now. How many units were there, Andrew? 63? 40, okay. So if we need 28 rental units, we need 140 units total for a 20% set aside. This was 40, which means you're gonna have to add 2 more stories on top of this. These are these lovely houses along with Union Street. They would have a 4-story plus parking building behind them. If you want to talk about whether that fits into the surrounding context, that would be a conversation to have. But we can't just say, let's redevelop 295 North Main Street. It's a very difficult site to redevelop. It is doable if we're willing to have a 4-story building there. What if there are no other sites? Are there other things we can do with affordable units to generate 28 affordable family rentals that would be eligible for 22 bonuses? We could ask for more accessory apartments. The rules require that the municipality subsidize those. There's a limit on quantity. We will have 6. We've committed to 6. We have 3. We need to do 3 more. We can have up to 10. Does 10 equal 28? No, it does not. The income requirements, remember we said 13%, we're going to have to be very low income. No very low income units are required in an accessory apartment program. Most of them are 1-bedroom units, but there are no bedroom distribution requirements, so you're not accommodating families, larger families. And as you pointed out earlier, they carry a 10-year deed restriction, so you can't apply bonuses to them. Bonuses must require a 30-year deed restriction.
Accessory apartment.
Excuse me?
What is an accessory apartment?
It is an apartment that is either in or on the same property as the main house. It's got a separate entry, it's got a full kitchen, it's an apartment.
They would have to be built, but they're already here.
They could be already here. They could be already here. It could be that you have an owner with an apartment who says, yes, I'm happy to make that affordable. Give me my $20,000.
She wants to always.
So there's that. We could deed restrict existing units. We could talk to owners and say, wouldn't you be interested in having your unit be an affordable unit? Again, requires a municipal subsidy. Easily $200,000 unit, easily, because you have to subsidize the difference between market price and the maximum price that can be charged to an income qualified household. We can only do either 10 or 10% of our obligation, whichever is greater. Again, there's no income requirement that says you have to do very low income. And they are generally ownership units, and not always, but if they're ownership units, there are no bonuses. So these ideas have been talked about. They are great ideas for generating affordable units overall. They're not, I don't think, going to help with the 28 affordable family rental units that we have promised to provide.
That would be an eminent domain you're talking about, right?
No, this is totally voluntary private ownership.
Or they could say no to the city.
So how are we gonna pay for that? If we're gonna do those, how are we gonna pay for that? If you take a look at the city website, you know that this is the report we just submitted to DCA for the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And this is the balance that was in there at the end of December. It's a little more now because we've repaid some money, but pretty much it's $240,000 that's in there at the moment. What goes into the trust fund? It is not taxpayer dollars. It is developer fees from building new residential development. If they don't have affordable units, they pay a fee. It is developer fees from non-residential development. The city is pretty much fully built out, so I'm gonna guess there's not a lot of opportunity for collecting that money. It is required by state law, but there's not a lot of opportunity. If we owned a bunch of units and collected rent, for example, or if we bought for sale units out of foreclosure and then sold them, other income encompasses that. And then the trust fund must be an interest-bearing account, so we get some interest. This is what's in there. We repaid some money in May, and so right now, this is about what's in there. We have some commitments. We have to spend some of this money on various things. 30% of it has to be spent on affordability assistance. That means making existing units more affordable. So it is rent subsidies, it's down payment assistance, it's emergency repair assistance. It's creating new very low income units. So remember we said there's no VLI requirement here. You could pay extra to get a very low income unit, and that would count as affordability assistance. So here's our commitments. We have to spend 30% of development fees and interest collected, not of the balance of development fees and interest collected on affordability assistance. In addition, in our settlement agreement, we committed to accessory apartments. So we've got to hold some money aside for that, should any homeowner be interested. Bottom line is, we have about $68,800 that we can allocate at the moment. So here it is, 30% of development fees and interest. So that's this plus this. 30% must be spent on affordability assistance. No more than 20% can be spent on administrative, which is paying people like Kelly and me and the courtmaster and your administrative agent. It's the administrative underpinnings of running an affordable housing program, which leaves a. Is $68,000 going to get us 28 accessory apartments? Probably not. Is $68,000 going to get us even one market to affordable unit? Probably not. There is another town in Hunterdon County who bonded $2.2 million for 25 affordable units. They have a great inventory. They have a lot of potential in that town to create affordable units. They've done that. Are we good?
My computer died, sorry.
All right. I'll take a couple of questions while you, let me know as soon as you back up and put me in, I don't do sketch.
That was on my god, it's
Who's overseeing the process for in the affordable housing fund? Because from what I understand, I've talked to the tax assessor, Rick Marcino, and he said on the of the future unit, right? That's what I paid, you know, when I
That's right.
built our house. And but he was saying that a lot of developer, he was not, they weren't forwarding this to him so he could make sure that the amount was correct. And he said a lot of developers got away with paying just the development costs, not the actual assessed value. So it seems to me we've been losing a lot of money there. And I would love to see what is that process and why
The process encoded in, the process is encoded in your development fee ordinance.
No, I don't, reviews, who are the people who are supposed to review?
It says in the development fee ordinance. Once you have land use approvals, it goes to this person does this person does that. There is a whole process set out in the development fee ordinance for who does what and when.
Okay, yeah, so that wasn't years to according to Rick. So
Can't answer whether or not that's true. I'm gonna turn that over to you.
I would have to turn it over to Kelly. I can't imagine, I certainly have no knowledge that that there have been any issues
Yeah,
with any of this process.
just don't know. It is spelled out very clearly and it is typically the same process. It's in the model development fee ordinance that Color published. So they wanted a
Like
standardized.
if your own employee, I'm saying, you know, the city's own employee is saying this, so I think that that needs to be investigated. And I'd love to get an investigation to that.
Well, he's paid by the city, but he's actually employed by the county and the state. So, clarification there. And, certainly if there's a charge of,
Okay.
yeah,
Looking to this first we're hearing, and I mean, to
Right.
Wayne's point, this is just one document at a time, it's processed and people pay.
So you should be involved in overseeing this as well.
I'm sorry, who is they?
Whoever the assessor's boss is, if he is if he's part of this process. And it's apparently he is part of this process because it has to be based on the assessed value, and he is the one who sets that value. So I think there's a breakdown in the system and we should look at it.
So I'm gonna say, when I look at the trust fund transactions, I do see development fees coming in pretty regularly.
Can we share those transactions with the public?
Probably not. I don't know whether we share individual transactions. The summaries are public. I don't know whether individual transactions. are
Right, and
public.
that's the question.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a Kelly.
Okay.
We can look into it, I've never seen, I mean, that's an individual.
So I can't guarantee-
I'm so surprised that the Bavarian apartments weren't included. Now, but when, was it 20 years? They were over 20 years old?
They're older than 1980.
Well, what can you do to update them? Like if you had new,
It's
Inside.
possible. I mean, there are things that could be, if we could do a gut rehab and reimpose affordability controls, and they would be considered new units. That takes money. That would take money from the
it
city.
seems like a better use of money than having this development over it. And
Anything is possible with money.
Who owns those?
yeah.
Aren't they HUD?
Steve.
No, it's owned by private companies. It's involved Chicano tenants.
Seems,
It's owned by private companies.
It's a private company, they own 5. Residential areas like that, are based in urban. I don't know if
Good. Jeff.
Couple of points when you mentioned the village apartment site, according to the June 6th minutes, they have by right 66 units. This flood rule would go into effect there, whether they built market rate and total market rate, or they built an inclusionary zoning project, because that's the rules apply to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever happens there, so it doesn't really matter, because even though I'm one of those people, I don't believe in building 100-year flood, we do it all the time. You know, we did 3 on Ferry Street with no affordables. We've done 30 on my end of town, and 6 more just got approved, and 3 more coming without one affordable. So there's 40 units out the Bridge Street, coming soon. And then with Plus and Farm, the point of the inclusion would be to do 100% affordable, because the town controls the property. As you know, the biggest cost for any developer for affordable housing is land.
Right.
So by having land,
The question was, how many could that
Right.
land support?
you could easily do 8 to 10 there without really going outside, maybe moving the inclusion a little bit if they're 100% affordable. And according to the minutes, the people who are looking to develop the village site said they were willing to do 13 and all rent. So we can't touch, I mean, I know the mayor and so can't touch them and talk to them because this whole high-rise is a redevelopment part of that. But there are potential sites to get us there. And you know, with Eagles closing very soon, and I've talked to Bill Corboy, I know him very well. He's willing to even work with a nonprofit developer on this site. So there are potentials out.
Sure.
And then here's the question I want to get to about the mountains. From in 2018, it was prior to Ida. It was also prior to really understanding the contamination potential up there. We don't know where that landfill ends. You know, it's a fuzzy thing on the map, but it's not defined.
We know there's contamination of
We
there.
also know there's contamination by the high school itself.
We know all that.
So the question becomes, does that site actually become developable?
Right, exactly. We're gonna talk,
if it has to get cleaned up,
Where it
who's
is not.
gonna pay for it and how long it's gonna take.
Yeah, in the redevelopment plan, it says the owner must pay for it,
Right.
who owns it now.
But
This, if the city were had to have bought it, it would be on the city side to clean it.
unless you're an innocent purchaser, which of name would be under the contract. Well, then you,
If the city bought it through eminent domain,
not
it would be
there.
very difficult to.
But the other side of it is since the landfill up there was municipal, there could be Merrick Wilson could sue the town for a plaintiff too.
All right, we're far.
Councilman,
I just had a quick question. I didn't understand about the rental credits before. Let's say if there's a project at 295 North Main, and let's say we can convince them to do family rentals. Okay, will you give us sort of an estimate as to what sort of bonuses or credits we would get for those?
So
It'll be
if-
12.
It's calculated based on the RDP. So your RDP is 88. You are entitled to rental bonuses equal to your rental obligation, which is 25%. So you can have up to 22 rental bonuses, and it's a 1-to-1.
Okay.
You have to have 22 units to apply all 22.
So if we were able to get 12 family rental units there, that would equate to 12 credits.
That's 12 unit credits and 12 bonus credits.
Yes, thank
And then you have 10 bonus credits that you're either leaving on the table or you're gonna apply someplace.
Thank you. Just in connection with this particular thing, I just wanna note, I mean. Whoever controls the microphone controls the outcome, because you decide, and I don't blame you, when we can ask questions and when we can't. So going back to the discussion, the story about what happened in 2018 originally. There were several parts of that story that were not exactly accurate of what was actually going on in terms of representations that were made that said the city wouldn't allow affordable housing on Delavan, which was not true. The city was happy to allow it. I live in the neighborhood, it was happy, but that the governing body didn't want to allow that. And the YMAC, there was supposedly a big pushback from the city. There wasn't a big, or from the residents. There was a big pushback from the residents, but others thought, well, I think in the governing body, but what happened was a whole lot of hugely expensive houses and some of the only property we have left. And now we're all sitting around saying, well, this is the only thing we've got. And I understand the presentation that you're here to make, and I appreciate it because it's been a lot of important information. But all of the other options are remarkably absent in the discussion about affordable housing here. Some were just mentioned, others and other people here have information about others. And it seems like we need to have, you've taken the time to be here, you've taken the time to tell us this is the night to talk about affordable housing. We're only talking about why we have to use the one site that people are concerned about. So why don't we also talk about the other elements that are out there that everyone knows there's other elements out there? It would be way more interesting to the residents if we had more complete information from someone with the body. I mean, you're a great source, but we're not getting the benefit of your source.
I'm gonna let Kelly answer because she was here for those negotiations and I was not.
Yes, absolutely.
Need to stand up.
So I think the first issue that everyone, when we talk about the high school site is that we have an agreement that says we are going to provide some housing unit count aside on that site. If that is not going to happen, what happens is then we have a gap in our plan. Elaine spent a lot of time talking about our numbers, our obligation, credits, bonuses, etc. And again, as things go up or down, that number changes, but there is a gap missing if that site's not developed. Fine, we need to solve that. There are options, there are compliance mechanisms, there are ways to solve for the unit count that would be missing. However, what it entails is also going back and negotiating with the folks at Fair Share Housing Center and taking that plan to the court for approval again. That unknown is simply that, it's just unknown. So what happens if we don't move on the site, if the redeveloper wants to control and say, I'm going at 200 units, I don't quite care. Fair Share Housing Center right now, we've been engaged in what's called a mediation process. We're not in front of the judge who is overseeing this case. We have a mediator. And they work with both parties to, again, ensure the compliance. Fair Share has a right and has had a right, for quite some time to pull out of this process and say, Lambertville, you're no longer, compliant with the settlement agreement from 2020. Put aside 2018, we had that one, it got amended. We agreed in 2020. You're no longer compliant with the terms in the 2020 agreement. What they would do is go to court and file a motion to enforce those terms. Again, the city would defend that, of course, and that unknown is what will come from the litigation. We don't know what the judge would say. It would be very clear. Anyone in this room knows there's a requirement. We're not compliant. The next round is coming, and it would be up to the judge. We have defense, but Fair Share would be able to go to court.
But we don't know what Fair Share would say if we talk to them now either, right?
That's where we are.
That we're talking to them or we haven't talked to them?
We're working with the mediator right now. So we don't know, well, we don't know
Right.
just yet.
We don't.
That's correct. So
As far as the current approval for the high school site, we're responsible for 28 units on that site.
Yes,
correct.
And that's the current plan.
right.
There's 28 units, 137 total units up there. And then 28 of which have to be Fair Share housing in some aspect, hopefully rentals, right? So,
Oh, they have to be rented.
so
Redevelopment plan
that, so,
requires that.
so that's the plan that we are obligated for, it's 28 units.
Correct.
Basically, we're not, we don't have to have we're not required to have 40 units. But the current approved plan is whatever gets built on there has to have 28 affordable units.
Correct.
Basically 137 units.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's enough, you know.
Yeah.
But then can you please clarify, are we building 200 or 137 on that side?
Right now, the adopted redevelopment plan, I think the actual is 137 or 139. 139. The adopted
So
redevelopment plan is 139 total units, of which 28 must be affordable. rent.
So it's not what's the.
That's what's been proposed.
By whom? The contractor?
Okay,
I thought they wanted to.
Yeah, that's
What's it done to develop for 137?
there is nobody's
And there's no hard plan that's been
Right.
given to the city for that.
Nobody has come in and said, and
Yeah.
that's an important point, because if we get to 2030 and there's been no activity on that site, one of the things we have to do in 2030 is to file what's called a midpoint review. And we will have to say why we think that site is still feasible.
This meeting. That was good.
I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure I understand what the negotiations that we're in are right now. Is there a mechanism by which circumstances have changed or new information has surfaced based on, what happened in Ida and also PFAs, which is kind of like new EPA regulations that are popping up there, where this site was deemed obviously developable, and that at this point, maybe it's not anymore. Is there a mechanism by which that is coming up in these negotiations?
I would say it's not specifically one thing. So we've gone back to the court and we have the court adjudicator. And the court adjudicator understands the situation. We've explained it. Councilman Lyde and I were in a meeting, so everything's been well explained, carefully explained to the judge and to the court adjudicator. And the court adjudicator is now assisting us with some conversations, and that's all I'm going to say. I don't think it's fair to the process, and I don't know that it's even appropriate to say anything more than that at the moment. But the court's now involved. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. We've talked about this. We knew that at some point, if we did not move forward with adopting the redevelopment plan, that the court was gonna have to become involved, and now the court's involved. And that's all that's all I can say, it's all I'm willing to say at this point. When we have more news, we'll certainly let you know. But certainly the court knows all of these things that have been happening. We've talked about the strong public sentiment on this. We've we certainly let them know that there have been some samplings, some tests that have indicated PFAS and other other contaminants in well water. We've talked about, a lot of these things we've talked about since the first day. So stormwater is something that we talked about. I talked about that in my first meeting. I've said that many times through. So a lot of these things we're just revisiting, and we have been very forthright in letting them know kind of what's transpired here in town since we introduced the ordinance back in June. Is that fair? Is that?
I apologize, I missed some of that.
Okay. Yes. All right. So that's where we are.
Does that property owner have the option to do a 30-year restriction that it counts?
Sure, there's no reason not to. I don't think the subsidy is enough to cover the lost rent for 30 years, but if they want to, absolutely. And then, yes, we would get a bonus for that.
And, just one other thing to say, we talked about some of these other mechanisms. For a fairly lengthy period in 2022, I worked with a property owner here in town to try and get one or more of his units from market to affordable. And it was a very difficult, slow moving process. Emily Goldman was involved with me. And in the end, we couldn't make it work, even though this is a property owner who has a lot of value in the community and who really wanted to move this forward. But I just say that these other mechanisms of, ADUs or market to affordable are they're very challenging to kind of undertake, and expectations in this real estate market in particular have made it, you have to be some good person to deed restrict an apartment for 20 or 10 years, or to move a market rate apartment, or even an apartment that may not be market rate because you're just a good guy and you're helping out a family. And these are difficult mechanisms to kind of move forward.
It's a challenging financial environment.
I have a question, is there some kind of rule where another town might take over the units, like would West Amwell take over, or we can't build them here? Doesn't sometimes another town?
There used to be something called a regional contribution agreement, which was essentially a mechanism whereby rich suburban white towns could offload part of their obligation to distressed urban municipalities. And an amendment to the Fair Housing Act in 2008 put a stop to that. So there's no longer a mechanism to be able to offload any of your obligations.
So the city had money from regional contribution agreements. And I always wondered what happened there, but also you had to restrict.
There it is. There's the money right there.
I just didn't try and talk. That's the RCA money?
55,000 right there.
$1 million.
No, but it went toward units. It went toward units. 50 something of the units at Heritage Village were paid for with RCA money. 4 affordable housing, 4 habitat units were paid for with RCA money. We cannot claim credit for those units because the towns that sent us the money get the credit.
Do you want to?
We don't, we're close.
Okay, great.
Wait, there's another, like, the whole affordable housing plan for the municipality. I know there's an ECHO ordinance, which is a rental.
No longer.
It's not.
ECHO is no longer compliance.
I worked with 5 municipalities to get it passed and approved.
Yeah, no longer.
And
When it comes to, I understand that it's a very difficult process for, ADUs to create ADUs, into, or market units into affordable. but I think one of the issues is that there's not available information for people who want to do that. I know at least one landlord who got misinformation, from someone she spoke to at City Hall. Saying that it had to be 30-year deed restricted, it couldn't be 10-year.
A market to affordable does.
Market to affordable has to be 30-year.
An accessory apartment is 10. Market to affordable is a whole house. If I say I am gonna sell my house, the city is gonna subsidize the difference between the market price and an affordable price. That deed restriction has to be 30 years.
Okay, but so you couldn't create an affordable unit from your rental without the subsidy from the city?
Correct.
The city.
City
city
has
is
to
paying-
subsidize. City is
who's the
essentially
city-
paying
who's the city paying.
the landowner, the property owner.
What if they don't want that? They never asked for that. They just want to turn it into a.
Do you know somebody like that?
Yeah, I think the problem is that there is not, this information is not available, and that's why the process is, one of the reasons why the process is so challenging. And so time consuming, I agree that, the mayor shouldn't be spending, all that time walking people through the process, but I think that there are solutions to that,
Well, I will say, I have worked in a lot of towns with an accessory apartment ordinance. You have created 2 more than any town I've worked in so far. So somehow the word is getting around, because you created 2 new accessory apartments.
Well, that's great. One of my, and I don't know, maybe this is, maybe that says something about Clark Pins and your company. Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about us. It's the administrative aides.
Municipalities in New Jersey that, as far as I can tell, they're, y'all are, it's basically, you're doing it for everybody. And so if those municipalities, if we're beating them by creating one, maybe there's something that y'all need to look at in the way that you work to make that an easier process for municipalities.
So noted. Who else had a question?
So this evidently isn't gonna get figured out overnight.
Oh, no.
So what if the developer up on the hill is getting tired of waiting? Can he walk away? Then what do we do? Has anybody thought about that? Like maybe he's got another thing he could buy.
I don't believe he's under any obligation with the city. All we have in terms of an agreement with Campaign is a funding agreement for escrow. For our professionals to review, engineer, planners, that kind of thing. Yeah, in theory, they could walk away from this and move on. And we would still be technically in compliance because the amended settlement plan is still on the books. So yeah.
We would be in compliance, but what if the environmental issues on the site show that it's undevelopable or unbuildable? Will we then have to take it off and find another site to add on?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But either way, we gotta start looking.
That was the biggest question.
Yeah.
Just one question that goes back to the first slide. Whatever developer goes up there, let's say it gets approved and they build. Are they no longer responsible if people get cancer, leukemia, and who live up there, or is the town now responsible because we knew there was a problem?
Madam Lawyer.
Out there.
But
Well, keep in mind, I do not know a lot about PFAS. I do know that it comes in water. These units up on the hill, if they get built, will not have well water. They will have city water.
And I think I touched on this at the last meeting, trying to ascertain responsibility for something in this situation would take many, many years and lots of lawyers, and you may still never get the answer that you want or expect or hope for. Let's see one.
But it could be deemed, it could be deemed, like Evan said, undevelopable.
Yes.
Yes,
Because-
and part of the reason why the council negotiated the 40 units up front was because there, quite honestly, is the possibility that the landfill site, which holds, according to the proposed amended plan, 28 or 32 houses, it seems like it's fairly reasonable to assume that that may never, that second phase would never come to pass. So, for me, that was one of the reasons why getting 40 units up front was such a good thing. Because we were not only, getting the 20%, but we were guaranteed to get more than the 20%, and then we're getting all these bonus credits. So.
And I do believe, again, it's not run this by Fair Share, but I do think that those 40 units would let us go into the fourth round with no unsatisfied obligation.
Elaine, for the fourth round could actually, question, not a statement, increase our obligation even further?
Funny you should ask.
That's just back, on to something new.
Well, we were talking about what happens if we decide the high school site is just not where we want to put affordable units, and that's what Kelly was saying.
Well, what's a builder could file exclusionary zoning lawsuit?
That basically says,
Let's just go through the slides.
yes, all right, so,
This is what Judy was asking.
so here we go. If we don't do that, we have 50 credits we have not satisfied out of our 88 unit RDP, right? 28 units, 22 bonuses, 50 total credits. Plus the 29 unmet need units we hadn't built yet. We would carry 79 unsatisfied units into the fourth round, in addition to whatever the fourth round obligation would be. We don't know what the fourth round obligation is going to be. If you do the math and you figure it's going to be 10 divided by 26 times 139, you come up with somewhere between 40 and 50 units. There's no way that I cannot bless that as accurate. We have no idea. Could be more, could be less. Let's just say it's between 40 and 50 units. Then you got to add 79 to that. You could apply for another vacant land adjustment, but the rules for the fourth round are different. The vacant land adjustment rules require you to look at redevelopable land. So the RDP could wind up being higher. And builders could come in and say, you know what? You guys really didn't mean it when you said you were gonna build, you really didn't mean it when you said you were gonna fulfill your obligation here. We're gonna file a lawsuit. We can satisfy your entire obligation on any of these sites. Maybe it's the high school site, maybe it's the village apartments, maybe it's that great parking lot in front of CVS.
Elaine, is that what's meant by a builder's remedy?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's meant. Exclusionary lawsuit, builder's remedy is kind of slang. I prefer the term exclusionary. They're basically saying, you're not making room for affordable units. We can do it for you. You remember the zoning board had an application for a 12-unit project on South Main Street? They could come back.
And I think it's just important to note the flip side of your question here. So KHOW walks away, that's one thing. If we do not move forward with KHOW, that's another thing, right? That if the council decides that we're not going to move forward, then Kelly may want to answer that question, but that's a big difference from the developer walking away from the city saying, no, thank you, you've changed our minds.
Could you clarify that, Kelly? What would happen in that situation?
What might
happen?
Possible.
Again, so we would be non-compliant.
Right.
We would be non-compliant with our affordable housing obligation. And at that point, Fair Share Housing Center most likely would sue us, file a motion to say Lambertville is non-compliant. They need to do something. What happens in those instances statewide, most likely a judge would appoint somebody. They could strip our power from planning and zoning. They could award to a developer that says, I will build X amount of units to satisfy Y part of the obligation here in the city. And if there's this outstanding obligation, it would move forward. I'm not saying it wouldn't be built to code, but it may be higher density than we prefer. And the unknown is what would happen. And you can read, everybody can Google what happens when you're non-compliant. That's what we'd be exposed to. I'm not scaring you, I'm telling you the truth. It's happening all over in the state. We would be in this situation that would not have the final judgment of compliance and repose. That's the stamp of approval saying that we are going to comply. And we would be open to any of the things that are going on that really elsewhere. What we're unique in some part is we are getting close to the fourth round, right? So in the fall, things are going to start ramping up in that regard. So again, does that hurt us? Does that help us? it's unknown.
Kelly, can you explain the non-compliance part if we are in agreement with the 2018, but not their proposal for 200? So what if we're agreeing on the 2018 plan, and so we're okay with that?
Like, you mean 2020?
2020, yeah. So one same number, exactly. And so let's say we're okay for development that's, gonna provide 139 units, but give us 20.
Yeah, the 139, that is an adopted redevelopment plan.
We then would be, if we are in total compliance with the fairness plan, we then will be presenting to the judge that we would like to go for final compliance hearing.
Yes,
Yes.
so I'm not understanding, because I think it's a little confusing. So let's say we don't want to do the 200 unit plan that KHOB has proposed.
Yeah.
But we say we're gonna stick with the 2020 plan that's already court approved. How can we not be compliant if we're agreeing to do the plan that the court has already approved? We just don't want to do the increase that they proposed.
Well, and just to supplement that, like there's something in the middle for me, which is that I assume that we've been talking to the judge about the environmental constraints there. So when the site was first in our plan, I don't think that we had the extensive knowledge that there wasn't a landfill closure plan, and that there was not, and that we have some of these issues of manufacturing at the high school site. So we're really in a process of evaluating, well, is there any building envelope up there? Given some of the issues that have been uncovered because of contamination, it's not us walking away and saying, yeah, we don't really feel like doing this. We're looking at a property that we're like, well, it looked like it was this big, and maybe it's not really, we need to, there is this middle ground of figuring that out or not, maybe there's a little bit, maybe there's none. But without that information, it's so hard to say, oh yeah, put 200 units up there, could somebody, put it all in the ground and figure out what that building envelope is? And I would assume, my personal experience, decades of, that would be worth is that you do have to look at some new knowledge that's come to ground. So where Evan, I just wanted to add that to what Evan was saying, because it's really kind of getting back to a lower number, and the one number that we had recognized a long time ago was that. Now we're looking at the building envelope on top of that, so there's a lot of different variations. I hate to say it's a take it or leave it thing, and the court's gonna look at it as a take it or leave it thing. It's incumbent upon us to express this stuff to the court too, about
Which has been
building
done.
envelope.
Yeah.
And getting there.
Yeah. Andrew and Councilman Lyde have both been very straightforward with the court about this issue.
Yeah, just to explain that here, because sometimes,
So I just want to reiterate that in my 2.5 years of being with the court, and Elaine has been in maybe
Almost
all of those meetings, there hasn't been a single time when we haven't talked about everything, right? So when I was working with this property owner for the market to affordable possibility, I talked about that every single meeting. That was a possibility. We talked about every single thing consistently. I have no reason not to bring what I hope is the most balanced approach to information to the court in all of these meetings. So and I'm very glad that we have Councilman Lyde participating now.
So just go back to my question, so if we're in compliance with the 2020 plan, we can't be uncompliant.
No, the question was what happens if the high school site comes out?
Okay, right, which I think maybe Kelly misspoke there, because you were saying if it doesn't go forward, but that's not the case.
Well,
Because we don't have any power if it goes forward, right?
hold that thought.
Yeah.
If nothing happens by 2030 on that high school site, our midpoint review for the 4th round is going to have to justify why it is still a viable option for construct. And maybe the problem is financial, but that's a problem. If there's no developer who can make this work financially, then what we have in the redevelopment plan is not feasible. It's not a realistic opportunity.
The other thing I just want to highlight is the police station site, which is still in
Plan.
the plan.
That is still in the plan?
So I think that's good to just
The
keep
L5
that
site
in your mind. It's
5 units on the police station.
Sure, it is to generate 5 units, that's correct.
I just wanted to go back to the slide before, because when you look at the size of the high school site. CVS site, I tried to get by the previous mayor.
These are just all sites that.
No, what I'm
come up.
saying is what we should be doing is, because whether or not there's gonna be a lawsuit down the road, builder's remedy, which can't happen for another year, plus if we don't do anything. We do need another plan, and we do need the plan coming forward, and every one of those sites, except for the high school site, if it turns out it has too many constraints, which I think it does, should be in our plan for potential affordable housing.
For sure.
That's my point. So don't get scared,
And
do it.
Quick,
or.
Quick.
What about the city establishing an ordinance? For every 2 units built? I don't know, I mean, the state, I remember working with Senator Schluter years ago with the 5 units. And setting up a trust fund. The Affordable Housing Trust.
so
What
5
about the
units.
City.
5 units is accepted statewide as the minimum number of units where it's financially feasible to set one aside as affordable.
Well, if we need affordable units.
It has to work for the person that
presented
it
to the judge.
Well, that's right. If you actually read the Mount Laurel 2 decision, it actually talked about having a planner and an accountant when you're doing it, because the number 4, 4 for 1, came from the legislature, didn't come from the courts. But given we're building $900,000, 1,500 square foot townhouses in this town. The affordable units given also for an affordable developer, if it's a moderate price unit, and the family of 4 is making $145,000 a year, they can spend $3,000 for rent. I mean, you could make money building the market. Right now, on the middle income units, you can make money just building middle income units based on we're in a wealthy area. And even now, when you get to the affordable, even low income, when you're building, $900,000 units, up on, if Canadian builds their project, there's 100 and whatever, 20 townhouses, they're gonna probably go for around 900,000. They're gonna be making 300,000 easily per unit. I mean, this whole formula, and I know you can't fix it, but the whole formula that we have was based on 1980s and the cost of housing there versus today. And so the point, and I know towns are going to 4 to 1 now. I know, but Montclair did 4 to 1. Jersey City did, but they give waivers, unfortunately, and North did 4 to 1. That if it's 4 units. yeah,
So-
one.
I don't know that Hovnanian's gonna be making $300,000 a unit. Nobody has shown me that number.
Right, but-
They could be making $300 a unit based on bringing utilities over and all the site work they have to do. I just don't know. The statewide standard says 5 units, you can set one aside as affordable and everybody stays whole.
But the city has the ability.
Yes.
No.
You
Yeah.
could, if you think,
Okay.
Can I just get a quick clarity on this based on Evan's question? So based on his question, is it true that if the city rejects the K Hovnanian plan, then the city is not out of compliance based on the current agreement? And a builder's remedy, or whatever that your
remedy.
term is,
exclusion.
cannot happen until we are deemed out of compliance.
Right.
So just rejecting this particular plan does not immediately, put us in a position where that would be
You're
happening.
out of compliance because the police lot hasn't moved. That is in the 2020 plan.
Can you say that again?
Yeah,
The police lot is what is not done in the 2020 plan.
And why is that not on that?
we
list?
have, well, so we haven't,
I'm not.
we have not talked about this. There was a timeline in the 2020 settlement agreement that said city had to adopt a redevelopment plan, which it did. The city had to put out an RFP and appoint a redeveloper, which it did. And the city had to sign a redevelopment agreement with that redeveloper for the police station lot, which it did not.
So we put those 5 units on Clausen, and that would, we could go back to fair share and
Right.
negotiate. So we, I mean, that's all the police station gave us.
We know we need to go back to fair share, and that is what we're doing.
And so my only point is the police station was only 5 units, so that's not an insurmountable burden for us to.
And there was no ones moved from Boston. Which was five.
I mean, there are a lot of moving parts. As I said, my job here is not to sell the high school site, but to make it clear why it's important, why it's in there. Because it solves a lot of problems for the city.
I think it creates a lot of other ones.
All right, I said we'd finish, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, the church school was just used as a temporary school while the elementary school went under construction. So now that the Catholic school is empty again, that's almost like a great location for housing. So is that something that we're talking to them about?
No.
No.
No?
No. I don't think, I don't know whether the diocese has any interest in divesting of that building. It's a beautiful building. My son went to school there, and, no, I don't think that the Methodist.
I don't know if the court would even agree with that because it's not available. I mean, your slide before said.
That has to be available.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
You could put an overlay on that site and offer the option if they have no interest.
Well, that might not be a bad one.
Yeah, but what about the Methodist church?
I don't know. I don't know.
Actually, everything.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Because a lot of Catholic churches are sold.
They're gone.
But just the point, police going one of the factors that came in after all the agreement, was the high density wires. That were gonna come in so close to the building, it was gonna be a high building, and there was concern about cancer. Low income was gonna be put on top, and that was what a lot of the issue was.
So a couple of thoughts. I think the low income was not necessarily gonna be put on top. It was gonna be fine.
Well, nearby,
That's
a
fine.
certain amount of distance between it and the
So we
building.
had no place.
Well, yeah, those have actually been moved now, so they're further away from the building, at my request, when. Not JCP&L, but when the other company, talked about relocating those, we said we'd like them as far away from the police building as possible, so they did that.
I mean, I think the real concern. I think the real concern with the police site was not just what you mentioned, Sandy, but there was no plan for where to put the police beyond 5 years. There was no cost estimate, which I think we were told something like $200,000 to permanently relocate the police with no data. So I guess, being that it's an essential public safety issue, could we be coerced, forced, whatever, into, moving on that site when we don't have the funds? Like, if we don't, like, the financial burden of that could be astronomical. I would think $200,000 isn't even gonna cover the cost of the boxes that you need to buy. To relocate a police station. So, and much less you have to buy land, you have to blah, blah, blah. So is that something that could be a factor? I'm just, kind of asking, is that a potential factor that would make that property, I don't know, unavailable? I don't know what the word is.
I have not heard of associated costs being used as a reason a property is not developable. I'll defer to Kelly on that, but as far as I know, if it's not specifically to do with the actual proposed development on the property, it's not considered an influencing factor.
Just wanted to follow up. There are other factors on the police station. One, if it's contaminated, that was an auto body plant.
Oh, yeah, we knew that.
And next to it was a stream and flooding.
We knew all of,
And Flemington spent $4.5 million for a police station.
Yeah.
Out there.
So if we did move ahead and approve the K-Hub LHS plan, but we still have not done what we need to do with the police station, are we then still out of compliance?
technically, yes.
Okay.
Technically, yes. You need, and you had a redevelopment agreement up for approval It did not get approved, which means the process needs to start over. You need to put out a new RFP and you start all over again. Again, that's not free.
Unless you're back to the court.
So back to the court and
Renegotiating.
it had
So
the
listen,
police station lot off. And then you could rescind the redevelopment plan and it,
Yeah, either way, there's renegotiation.
Yeah.
It sounds.
absolutely. All right, I want to move on. We've got just a couple minutes left. I want to talk for a couple minutes about what's going to happen in the fourth round. It begins July 1st. We have less than a year. And by and large, Fair Share in the courts really want third round plans finalized in the third round. Our obligation could be around 40 or 50 units. We bring forward any unsatisfied obligation from the third round. Doesn't get us out of anything. We can petition again for a vacant land adjustment, but the rules are different in the fourth round. The rules require us to look at land that could redevelop. It's not just vacant land, which means the RDP, if we do get a vacant land adjustment, would be higher than if we only had to consider vacant parcels. And again, as we've talked about before, if nothing happens on the high school site by 2030, we're going to have to justify why it is still a realistic site. Regardless of whether we think it's realistic or not, unless we can really demonstrate that it isn't, it stays in the RDP. It contributes units to that obligation. All of which is to say, oh, and I should go through the timing for the fourth round. DCA is going to publish the numbers in October. If you take me aside privately and ask me whether I think that's actually going to happen, I will give you my opinion. We are also calculating numbers for our clients. The methodology is prescribed in the law that was passed in March. This is not a protracted negotiation. There's a methodology that generates a number. We can like the number or not. We can dispute some assumptions in the methodology, but the number has to be based on the methodology in the law. And that was intended to remove all the protracted negotiation. So methodology, numbers come out in October in theory. The city is going to have to stipulate to the numbers or not by binding resolution by the end of January. Interested parties might challenge. If you don't like the number you're given and you stipulate to a lower number, interested parties could come in and say, we know you can do more than that. We're going to challenge your number. That has to happen by the end of February. All those challenges have to be resolved by the end of March. That's going to happen. And the city must then adopt housing element and fair share plan by the end of June next year. That is true for every municipality in the state. And then you have proposed ordinances, you have to adopt the ordinances by March of next year. Any implementing ordinances, overlays, whatever the rezonings, whatever they are. Interested parties can challenge your housing plan. There's a timeline for that. But basically, look for numbers in October. You're going to have to stipulate to them by the end of January, and your housing plan's going to have to be done and adopted by the end of June. So,
Maybe some people put their hands up online on.
Are there? Thank you. We did.
and do they have questions?
Yeah,
Well, let's go.
Thanks.
Telling you.
yeah, it's telling you.
I can't see this. No.
I barely can see it, but I can.
Julia, go ahead and talk.
Hi, everybody. It's Julia Taylor. Just a question. I'm going back to the statement, Elaine, that you made that you haven't seen that cost to redevelop is a cause for a site to be deemed undevelopable. Thinking about the high school site, there are a lot of concerns that come down to cost ultimately, like how much would it cost to clean up? How much would it cost to actually get sewer and water up there? How would we go about, if it does turn out that this is not a feasible site for all these reasons, how do we prove that it's not developable other than the cost concern? So let's say it's millions of dollars to get water to the site. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the affordable housing rules require public water. If we can't get the public water there, like how would we prove that to get the site off of our plan?
So I don't think the rules require public water. If you can demonstrate that you can provide water some other way. Well, I'm working in a couple of towns where they are providing well water for small affordable developments. But you do have to show that you can provide water and sewer or water and septic by whatever means.
Okay, so whatever means could include an exorbitant cost.
Yeah, it could.
Okay, thanks.
No, no other hands raised.
Just on that point that Joey Taylor just brought up, do we know that this is an issue that has been decided and ruled on that you can't count that, or we just don't know of it being used? The outrageous cost being used to say undevelopable. Do we know of actual decisions, or do we just not know of it,
I've not ever seen it accepted as a reason, but again, I'm gonna let Kelly.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
Have you seen it put forth by anybody?
yeah, I have seen towns spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I've seen that too, where
Yeah.
sewer lines had to be.
Right, but we don't, just that narrow point, we don't know of it being challenged and ruled on in the court, we just don't know. So it may or may not, right?
I don't believe it has ever.
It hasn't ever been brought,
used. Yeah,
hasn't been used,
I
hasn't
don't
been.
believe it.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Make sure we do that.
A developer would not come in. I mean, K-Hoff came in and said, we can develop this property. They're not idiots. They have run some numbers. They would not be here if they didn't think they could make it work for them financially. Might not be true once they do the full investigation, but they've run their numbers.
Or we'd have to pick up a lot of off track improvements, like widening the road for a traffic light on 179.
Or not,
But
or not.
I just,
But this is also in a redevelopment area, and now we're getting really far afield. This is also what a pilot can do for you. A pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, which is an agreement that you make with the developer. It typically helps finance public improvement like extending sewer and water or widening a road.
I think on that point, quite a lot of us have been asking for a timeline about this. When in the process are we gonna know? Before,
Are we gonna know what, Larry?
are we gonna know what the property tax implications are? The sewer cost implementation, water cost implementation. And I keep asking that, and I sent a letter to the mayor to council just a few days ago, and I got an answer back that, well, we'll know in the process.
Well, if I'm
And
not.
nobody seems to know what, before the developer has got the green light to go on this. I've not yet heard anyone say, we will have a good solid estimate what it's gonna cost to upgrade the stormwater system, to upgrade the sewer system, to put water on the hill. It never is a solid answer.
It can't be a solid answer because we're nowhere near the question.
The question is when.
I don't know.
Will it come before?
As I said in my email response, until such time as a redevelopment plan is, ordinance is adopted, we can't even begin to have the conversation because all of the very complex. The very complex financial end of things can't even begin until we start to. We have to first, if this moves forward, we have to adopt redevelopment ordinance. And only then do we begin to have a conversation about a redeveloper agreement. And what the finances are gonna look like and what the infrastructure is gonna be. And are we gonna require them to do X, Y, and Z in terms of public infrastructure? And how does that get worked into a pilot or other financing? It's incredibly complicated and we're not gonna have any of those answers until much later on in the process.
All I'm asking is when in the process.
Well, so think about this. They're not gonna do.
September of 2025.
No, they're not gonna do
And in
anything.
the process.
They're not gonna do anything until there's an adopted redevelopment agreement. Because that's their guarantee that they could come in with an application for what the redevelopment agreement says. So that's step one in the process. Then is step two the agreement or step two the site plan application?
Step two is the agreement.
And that takes months to negotiate.
Okay.
So if we're gonna vote on the redevelopment plan in October, we might not see a redevelopment agreement till March of next year at the earliest.
I keep saying, I'm not asking you for a month, I'm
Well-
asking you for,
They put it
this
stage.
gets approved. How are we going to know what cost implications are for all the peripheral remedial cleanup around this? Because we've seen developments happen here where things had to get upgraded, and that came after the developer built the thing.
I'm not sure I understand.
That's, I don't, what is so hard about, there's step A, there's step B, there's step C. Step C is the site plan, detailed site plan. Will we have a property tax study that says, here's what's gonna come to us, just like just happened with the school? The school did an excellent job of telling us, here's what's gonna show up in your property tax. I got the 30% I expected to get. And they told me what it was for. But I keep asking and asking and asking. Before A, B, or C happens, do we know what it costs? If we decided it costs too much to build a new police station, I can't even imagine how much it's gonna cost to add on 20% stormwater and 20% of the sewer coming down off the hill. We're talking.
And would the
Thank you.
developer not put the bill for that?
Correct, yeah, we're just getting in the weeds here, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna continue this conversation because I think that. My answer to your email was sufficient insofar as, you know, this is a multi-step process and I don't have any of those answers for you. The next, if the redevelopment ordinance gets adopted, the next thing we do is the city council works with Canadian to negotiate a redevelopers agreement, and that's where a lot of this gets fleshed out. A pilot may be worked into that or may not be. That pilot may require the developer to do X, Y, and Z, as I noted, or whatever. So, you know, the next big step would be a redevelopers agreement. And we have no idea what the numbers are gonna be. And typically a pilot is gonna bring in tons of money to the city. And there's not gonna be a tax implication for you. Well, we don't, so yes, we don't know all these variables yet. So it's really, I feel like it's, not only is it, not only can I not really answer the question, but I feel like it's in a way irresponsible to answer the question because there are just too many variables. And so I need to end the conversation on that note. And we're gonna wrap up here in the next few minutes because we've been here for a couple of hours already. So please, Sean, then, and then,
Yeah, I just have a quick question about that, that redevelopment agreement. If we approve the ordinance and we go into negotiations and we can't agree at that point, on terms, if we back out at that point, is there any penalty?
I don't know, I don't have our redevelopment attorney here tonight, so I can't answer that question.
That's an important question.
Yeah, well, let's go.
Everyone's under the impression that if we, or at least I'm under the impression that if we approve this ordinance, we have some obligation after that. And so, you know, if we go into these agreements and we can't, you know, because we don't have enough information yet, so, you know, we need to go into the negotiations to get that information, saying other things that are starting. If we can't agree on terms, we can just back out of that with no.
I understand the question, I can't answer it. I need Bill Ogle here for that question. This is really just about this.
Okay.
So,
Well, but to follow up, because it's along those same lines, if we pass this new redevelopment agreement amendment, that is then the redevelopment amendment that we are with in terms of fair share housing in the courts. We get farther down the road and, as Sean suggests, the agreement falls apart. It makes it harder for us, because like right now, all right, the 5 units in the police station, we think there's a good chance we can get them. You know, potentially. Back to Councilman Clyde's question, or I thought I heard him say. But in terms of the 2020 agreement, we're still in compliance with it if we want. If
You mean the plan, the 2020 redevelopment?
2020 plan, yes, we're in compliance with that. The minute we vote and pass this next one, we're setting the bar for 200 units on that hill as opposed to 139, correct?
Technically, yes.
Well, legally, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now, if we have to go back to the court and explain, oh, well, we couldn't agree in the end. Then, well, they're gonna hold us to the 139 up there, and they could come in and say. I mean, the 200 up there, and they could come in and say, we don't care. Go ahead and do it anyway, so that's the danger of jacking it up, we'll up the ante.
That's not right.
Everything's. So difficult to speculate.
Can't hear you.
I understand your point. It's difficult to speculate or comment on that. Given that the matter is controlled by the courts.
I'm not
You're making
speculating,
a lot.
fine, I'm just saying what our agreement is if we're gonna be on the.
Would it be unusual for in negotiation, caveat? If we are with one developer, doesn't work out, there have been contingency plans in other municipalities, with developers in an amended agreement. Should, again, the city and the developer be proceeding in good faith, and then that not come to fruition, it would not be unusual to have a
There
backup
would be
plan.
backup, that compliance mechanisms that
So,
fill that.
to the point that if the two parties say 200 units, and then that there's a breakup,
Yeah.
it doesn't automatically say the city might be obligated for that new number. That is very common to have backup contingencies in a plan, that Fair Share would approve.
I'm sure it would approve, but I mean, by the same token, by then it's 2025. All right, they're gonna be able to take us to court because at the end of 2025, hey, Hovian's gonna be able to take us to court at the end of 2025. And said, we don't agree with this, here's the reasons why, Judge, we think we ought to be able to build this. Because we will be out of compliance with a 200 unit plan. If this ordinance the redevelopment plan amendment gets adopted, it'll become a 2020 plan.
It's,
2024.
there's also,
Sorry.
there's also an amended settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. And that, I think, is what Kelly's talking about, that build backups and contingencies into that. So if it says, if this plan for 200 units does not move forward, these other things must happen.
That clears that up for me, thank you.
Okay, I think we're gonna finish up. Gratitude to you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For coming tonight, I appreciate it, and I hope you learned something. I did, and thanks to everybody who was here on Zoom. How many people did we have? 14 people. Thanks again, and good night.